So now let's start with number 5, the 5th worst signing. Now this one, a lot of people will hear this and probably turn the video off and like, oh, these guys know nothing about what they're doing. They shouldn't have a podcast. They're not wrestling fans. They're terrible, terrible people. After I say the name here. But at 5, I have Mercedes Monet. We both have Mercedes Monet collectively. This is a collective list here, pal. Yeah. You could easily put Ric Flair. After the way you laid it out, I forgot, like, how I just put all of that out of my brain about Ric Flair being a focal point. The only thing I literally thought of was him telling 19-year-old women to knock on his door at Rampage. I forgot all about him being a focal point on AEW TV last year. So because of that, if you want to put Flair in the top 5, I don't blame you. I have Mercedes Monet. I mean, I'm looking at it like this. You've got Conrad Thompson, right? You know Conrad Thompson, the podcast guy, has a podcast with Bruce Pritchard, Eric Bischoff, all that.
Yeah.
He's Mr. Positive with wrestling. If you listen to any of his podcasts, he will find a positive spin on anything. Anything. Like he's not a shill for any one company. He just Mr. Positive, everything's positive. Let's find the good in everything. It's a great feature to have. Especially in this modern media. He tweeted out, I think it was last week. No, not this past Wednesday, but the Wednesday prior. During Mercedes Monet's promo, he was like, this is bad. This is awful. If Conrad Thompson's saying, hey, Mercedes Monet and what she's involved in is awful, I mean, it's awful. Like, it's just bad at that point. And a lot of, like, AEW diehards, like, bro, this girl, a waste of talent, not a star. We're seeing now why Triple H and Nick Khan and Vince McMahon, even this goes back to the Vince regime. We're like, yeah, we're not paying you Charlotte Flair money, Becky Lynch money. No, we're not. Like, I get it. You've been in Disney. You've been on Star Wars, but we're not paying you Charlotte Flair money. She's bad, bro. She's bad. And on top of that, she has creative control and leverage. Presumably, this is all presumed. I don't know facts, but presumably she has creative control and leverage. I mean, she's been a champion pretty much since her first match on pay-per-view. She dominates the show. She gets like 10, 15-minute segments every week. And we talked about this when the rumors were on the horizon. It was like, oh, Sasha's going to debut in Boston. Can she be a big star? Can she do it? This is her betting on herself and Tony Khan betting on her. And it looks like she can right now. We're 5 months into the experiment from Boston. Not a lot going. She's making a ton of money. And I doubt she's making half of that investment back for AEW. You know, at least you could say, for what it's worth, we're going to talk about him later on, but for what it's worth with CM Punk. He drew tickets. He sold merchandise. He sold out gates. CM Punk was big business. Sasha Banks, Mercedes Monet is not doing that. And presumably she's pissing people off too backstage. So I don't think it's a great signing.
No, it's really not. And yeah, it's been 5 months, as you say. It hasn't been 3 years yet. We haven't got the full sample body of work with this, but when she comes in, it's like, this is the savior of AEW women's wrestling. Yep. She's going to make the division. She's going to save the women's locker room in AEW. She's the focal point. And yeah, she's the focal point, sure. But now we sit here and it's like, well, what's she done so far that you're going to want to go and show other people? Or you're going to want to end this podcast to go and watch? Like, is there something? Is there a moment? Like, I remember when she came out with her, like, debut, and she came out in Boston Power, 10,000 people, 4,000 of those were free tickets given away. CEO, pal. She's doing the whole, this is where I belong, this is where the best wrestle, AEW. But all she's really been is just like another mouthpiece for Tony Khan to go on interviews on ESPN or wherever, radio interviews, podcast interviews. AEW is where the best wrestle. Oh, I'm in AEW. It's like, okay. And yeah, now she's getting a bunch of hate, even as you say, Conrad Thompson and these other podcast people, not just us, because some people say we're biased and whatever. It's not just us. There are a lot of podcasts, a lot of people on Twitter or the wrestling sphere who are just like, no, thank you. Like, Mercedes, what else can you give us now, Tony? Like, we want something fresh, something new. We're sick of this already. It's like, it's been a couple of months, which that's the perfect sign. It hasn't worked. It hasn't been a great signing. No, it hasn't been one of the worst signings. That's why we have it here. Because it's been 5 months and it just has not worked. And it's been like the main thing in AEW women's wrestling. As you say, this dominates the women's spot. Because Tony Khan has this 15-minute block of TV time, which is the women's spot on every Dynamite. This dominates that most weeks. And it's not getting good feedback whatsoever. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And I'll just reiterate this. we have Mercedes Monet as high as we do because she's supposed to be like a star. She's supposed to be like a CM Punk. Like that's really what we've been sold as viewers. Like she's going to be the CM Punk, the new CM Punk, the person to carry the company into a new direction, really big heights, help bring them out of this funk they've been in for about a year now, and it just hasn't worked out that way. Now, moving on. We'll make this one quick. We have Paul White, Big Show. Really bad signing, honestly. Like this guy, again, it's another one. Presumably, what he's getting paid and what he's done for the company, they just don't really balance out. And on top of that, what we did see from this guy, I think it was All Out. Was it All Out 2021 where he co-main evented? He co-main evented
about then, like 2 years ago. He was in some big TV stuff. But
yeah, he's
like,
wrestling QT Marshall in the co-main event of All Out. I was like, this is AEW's biggest show. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna, like, I'll bounce back to you in a second, but yeah, I don't know what part of Tony Khan, when Big Show became available, was like, damn, we got to get that guy. Like, Tony Khan doesn't like big wrestlers as is. We see that from who he pushes. If he was a fan of big wrestlers, Powerhouse Hobbs, Brian Cage, these sort of guys would have been world champion at least, instead of just floating around the FTW title picture for 3 years. And yeah, Big Show, he's involved, like at this time a year ago, pal. Same thing as Ric Flair. This time a year ago, he's in main storylines, major TV spots. He's involved in the 8-man tag match, pal, with Kenny Omega and Takashita, pal. Who's the mystery 8th man, pal? It's Paul White. Like, what? Who's asking for this? It doesn't even add up with Tony Khan's usual type of wrestler he likes. The 6 foot tall, but really they're 5'8", guy who's wrestled in Japan or guy who has a great indie catalog. It's not that. It's Paul White at 53. The same Big Show who literally he couldn't move sideways. Remember that angle where a wrestler ran at him on the ramp and Big Show couldn't move, so he just punched him straight on because he couldn't move sideways because of his knees. Then they're that bad. Like, bruh. And I don't know. God knows how much he's getting paid.
I know.
What a terrible signing. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, really bad. No, for sure. I'll say this, then we'll go to the next one. I remember vividly, this was January 2021. The rumors were that Christian Cage was the big signing that Tony Khan was going to announce at Revolution. And then it leaked, it came out 3 days before that. Oh, Paul White is signed with AEW. And that ended up being a bigger splash than Christian. Paul White has just more notoriety. Big Show has more notoriety than Christian. It just, he's a bigger star. And it shook up the wrestling world for 10 minutes. Everybody was like, oh, okay. Big Show left WWE. Everybody thought, oh, this guy will die in a WWE ring. It was a shocker. But at the end of the day, what did Big Show have to offer to WWE and AEW? And, we still don't really know. I'm sure there's he brings a lot of value backstage, a lot of wisdom. But then you've got these arrogant, indie wrestlers from what we hear about them that don't want to listen to a guy like Big Show or Jim Ross. So, yeah. All right.
Who knows, pal? Who knows? So, yeah, that's that one. Then we move on, pal. This one... Look, I know we've got the list written down. I'm going to say this one's the third worst, then we'll get to the second worst. I've got Keith Lee as the third worst. This is a guy, similar to... Not similar to Big Show, because, Keith Lee still has, when he came in, a lot to give. You thought, okay, he's going to come in, he's going to be a world champion in this company. Triple H, WWE, Vince McMahon, dropped the ball with him, pal. Even though Keith Lee, he was the NXT champion, he's the North American champion. He beat Randy Orton in his first match within a week. He was thrust into the main picture in WWE, and then he sort of tailed off. He came into AEW, pal, in the Game Changer era, pal, when every 3 weeks there was a new Game Changer signing, and Twitter would say it's over for Vince McMahon, it's over for WWE. Look who AEW's got. Keith Lee came in, and his gimmick was that he was the Grand Wizard for a bit, and he's contributed literally nothing, pal. What's one thing Keith Lee's done in 3.5 years that's justified the Game Changer hype he came in with? Because when he came in, pal, you'd think this was Stone Cold Steve Austin in his prime signing with WCW in 1999. That was the sort of buzz on Twitter, at least.
Yeah.
That you'd think Keith Lee was the NWO in 1996. With how Twitter, I'm not even over exaggerating, with how Twitter was making this out. And what's happened? He's been on Dark. He's been on Rampage a bit. He's had some 6-man tags on Collision. Yeah, he's had a run with the TNT title, I think.
I think he. I don't know. Let me look it up.
Just you look at this guy and you think, what an absolute waste. Like, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was that he didn't have the work ethic, or maybe it was the fact that physically he's not the same body shape as the guys Tony Khan likes. Or I don't know what it is, but yeah. What do you reckon, pal?
Let me see. I'm gonna look up if he did anything of note. He was a tag team champion with Swerve Strickland a couple years back.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. That's the only title reign he's had in AEW.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I remember our friend, Superkick Studios, made a video in the middle of the pandemic. This is like in the heart of the pandemic, like July 2020, and it was like, oh, these two guys are the future of wrestling, and it was about MJF and Keith Lee. Keith Lee was in NXT, MJF obviously in AEW on the rise. And you know, I'm not talking bad about our boy, because at the time everybody loved Keith Lee, you know.
Yeah.
But I do remember, like, and that's just, I bring that up because it's a symbolism of like the hype where Keith Lee was. A lot of people were echoing that sentiment, like Keith Lee is going to be the next guy. And I remember thinking, I was like, okay, this guy's like 35. He's not really that good. He had a little moment. He was good for like 6 months in NXT. Had a moment, got over. It wasn't like with MJF where you could point to and say, okay, this is Cody's boy. He's going to succeed. He's got the mic skills. He's got the look. He's got it. You know, there was nothing really there with Keith Lee where I saw the it factor. And I just never bought the hype. And I think we've seen it now where, yeah, Keith Lee showed up in WWE on the main roster, beat Randy Orton, and then it was what, like 3 weeks later, 6 weeks later, something like that. The reports came out that Vince sent him back to the performance center to lose weight and to learn how to wrestle. You know, he didn't want him like jumping over the top rope and like breaking his neck or something, or injuring somebody. And then he was mad about that. You know, he's like, oh, don't tell me how to wrestle. I'm an indie guy. I know everything. And that kind of attitude, you see where it gets you. Now he's not doing anything in AEW. And yeah, he came in with all this fanfare. It just hasn't worked out. And it's really like, he's at the top of this list because of the prospect that he was. And people were like, oh, this guy is going to be the savior of wrestling. And it just hasn't been that at all.
Nah, couldn't agree more with Keith Lee. Yeah, like, I'm just remembering now, you know, bask in his glory, pal. He's limitless. Like, this is like literally the middle of the CV, pal. We're all locked in our houses, pal, watching 8 hours of wrestling a day. This is the guy, and it's crazy what it amounted to. It amounted to like a 3 and a bit year AEW run where most of it you don't even remember he's employed. He's just not even on the show.
Yep.
He's just a guy he's a guy chilling with the boys backstage, getting his paycheck from Tony Khan. He's a 39-year-old man. He enjoys catering and he sits around. And
he's married to me and you, so shout out to him for that.
Shout out to him for that. But yeah, pals, that's Keith Lee. Next, this one.
Can I take this?
Look, yeah, go for it.
I love talking about this guy, pal. So number 2, we have Andrade El Idolo. And I love talking about this because I had somebody in my mentions at one point said Andrade was better than Eddie Guerrero. And they meant this for real. And a bunch of people just like attacked this guy. And I'm not condoning that. That's just the type of love and the way Eddie's gate kept. And Eddie started trending on Twitter all because of this. And I was like, man, this is ugly, bro. Like this is bad. So yeah, that's where we were at with Andrade at one point. Andrade was being compared to other lucha legends like Eddie and Rey Mysterio and even Penta and Phoenix and guys like that, Mil Mascaras, all these guys. And to be frank, Andrade El Idolo does not belong in the same conversation with any of those Mexican wrestling legends. And Tony Khan brought him into AEW and treated him like he was this big star. He came in with creative control, which was like, of all people that are going to get creative control, Andrade is getting creative control. Like, and that's a problem in and of itself when you're giving out creative control to wrestlers, let alone a wrestler like Andrade. So if I'm like, I don't know, throw out a name from 2020 AEW. If I'm MJF, just say I'm MJF. I'm like, okay, I'm clearly better than this guy, Andrade. Why does he have creative control? And I don't. You know, then you got like, you know, Anthony Ogogo. Oh, I'm an Olympic boxer, pal. I should have creative control. Now everybody wants creative control. When you're just giving out creative control to a guy like Andrade, he's more known from my vantage point, at least, he's more known for his backstage antics in AEW, punching out Sammy Guevara. I mean, the Twitter spats they've been involved in. I think Eddie Kingston even got in on this mess too. Eddie Kingston got into it with Andrade, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was brought in to be, again, the savior of AEW, the guy that's going to take AEW to the next level. And it's an embarrassment, honestly.
I remember that, what you mentioned there about the Twitter. I remember that person who was like, like Andrade El Idolo, I want over Eddie Guerrero. Like, he's just better than him. I remember the freak out. I do remember that. No, what a terrible signing. Really. I mean, at the time, right, Andrade goes across, and this was during your peak 2020, 2021. WWE's at jail, Vince McMahon's evil. Get out of WWE. AEW is where the best wrestle pal. AEW is where you go to really be a star. And that was during, like, Andrade went to AEW during the peak of that narrative. And I mean, with hindsight now, like, if people knew what would happen in 2022, 23, 24, most of those people wouldn't have jumped ship. But nonetheless, he comes into AEW. Oh my God, he's a creative control power. Oh my God, what a big signing. And all I remember him for is what you just said there. Some backstage fights and Twitter drama on screen. He hasn't done a whole hell of a lot. He's had a couple of good matches. Yes, sure. It's like, and this is the guy they're paying God knows how much money. They probably, give him some sort of creative clause in his contract, which causes more friction. I just don't know, pal. Like, another just dumb decision made during a time where, Vince McMahon and WWE was a jail. Sure, I guess that was so bad, so nasty, so horrible. AEW is just the safe space, place you want to go to be a talent. Sure, Tony Khan stuffed this one up. Andrade made a bad decision. Now he's back in WWE nowadays. But this was a bad signing. It's just not great, not good all around. Easily a top 5 worst signing. Great, no debate there.
Oh yeah, and here we go. Number 1, pal. This might be controversial to some. CM Punk is the number 1 worst signing by AEW. Now, on paper, if you're talking about the business and his debut and all that, CM Punk is the greatest signing the AEW ever made. Just from the aspect, okay, he brought in all this money, big star, he was the focal point of the company, he was the guy that people were paying to see, he was bringing casual viewers in. But then you got to look at it like for what the guy did in the company, right? And I mean, he tore that place apart. Not him by himself, but just a working relationship with Tony Khan and the lack thereof of leadership of Tony Khan. Now, Tony Khan, if you're going to handle a personality with like CM Punk, you gotta be like an alpha male, like how Vince and Triple H are, presumably, and Nick Khan and these kind of guys. Tony Khan does not seem to be, from what we've heard about him, to be that kind of guy, right? And it just didn't work out. It just became a mess. And honestly, I don't know if AEW will ever recover from the CM Punk signing, and more importantly, the CM Punk departure from AEW. We're a year removed now from when Punk was escorted out and fired on live TV by Tony Khan after All in London last year.
Yep.
Where Punk punches out Jack Perry and walks through the curtain with a smile and wrestles Samoa Joe in the opening match of the card. The All Out 2022 debacle, Brawl Out. We're not going to talk all the specifics, but CM Punk, the worst signing in AEW history, I think by a substantial margin.
Yeah, and as you say, I mean, the reason for this is because he usually turned the company inside out. Like, that's why he's the worst signing. I mean, as you said, I mean, merch numbers, some like the data sort of stuff, t-shirts sold, viewers drawn in, whatever. Best signing in AEW history, or one of them. But when it comes to what he did for the company in the grand scheme of it, divided the locker room, made Tony Khan, which, I mean, this is Tony Khan being an idiot, but try and break it off into 2 shows. Not great. Got fired for beating up an employee. I mean, among other indiscretions, but not great. Tony CM Punk takes this for what we say is the worst signing. Yes, Andrade, dumb signing. Keith Lee, the amount to nothing. Mercedes Monet, not turning out very well. Ric Flair, Big Show, Hardys, all these ones we mentioned, not great. Not great, but none of them completely divided the locker room. Got fired for punching out another employee. Not great. So yeah, they're the worst signings. But anything else you want to say on CM Punk?
I just say like a lot of people hated him off the bat. Like a lot of people did not want him in AEW, and that's part of it too. Like you want to ideally you want a guy like Cody to be your big star, and we see that now. Like Cody, he's like best friends with the janitor, pal. Like not even to be funny, like he seems like the kind of guy that talks to like anybody and knows like the names of their children, like everybody from the ring crew, the camera crew, like the people that are the interns that are like doing the cable management. Like he just seems like that kind of guy.
You seen the video of it was I think someone in the makeup team, like one of like the 10 people in the makeup team. Cody bought them like a thing of flowers. Instead of flowers, they were like either chocolates or like they were strawberries with chocolate on them, and it's like this very thoughtful, generous gesture to like a random employee in the makeup team.
Yeah,
like they're the sort of signings you want, pal. They're the people Nick Khan gets his checkbook out and gives $10 million in a tour bus to. Right. Those sort of people, pal. Not Phil Brooks, who's punching people out.
Well, he did get all that from WWE too, but
knocking monitors, pal, onto the person who runs the show.
Yeah, and I'll close with this. Like Punk did half of that stuff, I'm sure, to get out of his contract with AEW. Like he was just like, what can I do to get fired from this place so I can go to WWE and go work for a real boss, pal?